Hello everybody, this is Let's Be Real Brad, and today I'm be talking about another movie, my 31 Days of Halloween movies, talking about the notorious 1931 American pre-code science fiction horror film, Frankenstein. Frankenstein was directed by James Whale and it stars Boris Karloff. To me, I truly do love the Universal classic monster films, as this is technically the second one in the franchise. What I think is so interesting is that this was a really revolutionary idea. The idea of the story and the characters and the acting, the production design was all so fantastic. I mean, these were just so phenomenal, and to this day I think a lot of them really hold up so well. And of course they're cheesy, and of course they're not scary anymore, but it's so crazy to think that people were so scared of this movie and how much of a different time that it was, and how much these movies were censored and they weren't be able to play in certain countries because of very specific things that are said in the movie that they made changes to, and how they put on TV. It's just such a very interesting thing to talk about, and as someone that loves horror movies, I really do enjoy these films so much, and I have such more of an appreciation for them. So when I start doing a lot of these movies, you're going to see that I might give them a little bit higher ratings than I would compare to normal films, because these movies came out in the 30s and 40s and considered very, very well for their time, and so trying to compare for its time is a little hard because you need to know about other films in that era, what were they doing differently, the influence that it had on the horror genre. So let's get into what I love about Frankenstein. I do think this is a true masterpiece, and the reason for that is because they really pushed the boundaries of the horror genre. You have a really good story that is based off the Mary Shelley novel that expands on this character of Henry Frankenstein, which they did change his name in the film. It's very straightforward, there's no fluff to it. My negatives with this film would be that it's too short, but for its time, that was considered great for what it was. And so that's why it feels like some things are missing out. There's so many things that they could have done with the story, but it's so impressive for what it is. Let's talk about Boris Karloff as Frankenstein's monster. I absolutely love and adore the look of this because the monster is so iconic, and it really started off the great horror monster movies that we've seen, and everyone adores them. They've been parodied, they've been in so many different cartoons everywhere that you know of, and it really chose the look and the design that we really still use to this day because of how it's looked, and no one wants to change it because it is the perfect design for the monster. Alan Clive as Henry Frankenstein is absolutely fantastic. I really do think that his acting is so phenomenal, and just because it was in the 30s as well makes me have a little bit more appreciation for him, because he was doing something that was far superior than a lot of the other people in this film. But he really is the true standout, and I gotta see more films of him. Production design is amazing. I mean, the fact that they shot so many of these scenes pretty much in the studio, and they had to create all these wonderful shots of the town and the tower with the science room and all these crazy extravagant things. These were all hand built, and it shows that there was so much amazing detail to this film, and they were looking to make this as real as possible. And some of it does look fake, of course, but especially for its time, I think people were absolutely amazed by it. Music is fantastic as well. It's something that we've obviously heard throughout the years. It's truly iconic, and I can't picture this movie without its incredible music. Direction from James Whale is really good in this movie. It's pretty solid, but James Whale gets so much better in the next couple of films that he does. But it just shows that during that time, like, they didn't really have how well they could direct certain shots, and I feel like James Whale really put in how do I direct a horror movie, and so much influence does come from him, as he was all about his craft. He was an artist, and he was doing things with the camera to create certain emotions or certain fears that were so presidentially influential that so many people have copied it throughout the years, and realized that James Whale was one of the first people to ever do it. I think the writing is actually pretty good in this movie. And in fact, I'm going to say very good in this movie. And I still think the dialogue between the characters is very good. Yeah, some of it's campy, some of it is cheesy, but this was literally one of the first movies to ever do it and to make it big. And I feel as though that it's still entertaining to listen to, and I feel like they really do make some really great points, and they actually have some deep themes in the film about becoming a god and what it takes to do that, and creating something that's not humane. And they do a really good job of integrating those themes within the writing of the story, and it really has a nice flow in the film, and I was never bored throughout. It has a really awesome ending that was written pretty well, that I still think it's one of the most iconic endings to this day. Technical aspects are obviously great. The editing is surprisingly very, very good, especially for its time, but I think it's really good now. I mean, there's some shots don't always work so well, probably with the film reels that couldn't go together, but I just think editing, if a movie has really good editing in this time period, I just find it all the more fascinating. Honestly, I really love the black and white look to this movie. There's some movies that I'm like, I wish we had a colored version. I don't want a colored version of these classic monster movies. I think that black and white has its nice charm, nostalgic look to it that just makes me all comfortable inside watching these movies, because they're not all that scary and they're outdated, but there's so much fun and there's so much great acting, and it's just so interesting. They were really focused on the artistic intent and not just simply making money, but really trying to make an effective horror monster film, and that's why I really appreciate films like Frankenstein. The movie clearly has so much influence I talked about before, that it really generated so many great other movies in this universe, and it just really showed what you can do with the horror genre, and it's something that I personally love, as the horror genre is probably one of my favorites, and just seeing that Frankenstein did so many things for that audience during those modern times, and just being controversial and censoring things out. People were petrified to see parts of this movie that we may find really campy and silly now. Just shows how much influence this movie had, being on a bunch of lists and just being such a great film. Very exciting action sequences that happen, especially in the third act, that showed that during that time it was very different of how they shot films back then, especially with their action sequences, and so it's just all the more impressive. I think this movie is truly a masterpiece. You guys gotta check this out. I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10. Have you guys seen the original 1931 Frankenstein? Do you think the next film that we're gonna be talking about, the 1935 The Bride of Frankenstein, do you think that one's better, worse? Let me know anything about Frankenstein down below. If you guys haven't already, please hit the like button. Please subscribe if you haven't already. It means the world to me. You guys are liking my videos. Subscribe to the channel. You guys are the best. As always, I'll see you guys in the next video.